Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov's chess channel and welcome to the Computer Chess Championship Season 15. So far this Blitz Madness tournament is going on, in which Stockfish 12, this Stockfish NNUE version, is of course in the lead. Stockfish hasn't lost a game so far, so it's really brutalizing every other engine. I'll simply cut the crap. I'm not going to praise Stockfish anymore. We'll simply skip to the game. Stockfish 12 versus Winter. It's really some wild shit going on again. Be prepared. So we have now, as usual, round 1 and fight. So knight to f3, played by Stockfish. We have e6, c4, knight to f6. We have d4 and d5. So far, the queen's gambit decline. We have knight to c3, and now after the move c5, the Tarrasch defense. And whenever you have such pawn collisions in the center, you should always evaluate the potential outcomes in the center. What you shouldn't allow your opponent that you get an isolated pawn, so that's why Stockfish plays c takes d5. We have c takes d4, and now queen to d4. If you try here knight to d5, then we can play e4, kick away the knight, and here after the move knight to c3, we could go queen to d8, preventing black from castling, but I still think queen to c3 is here the best move with healthy developing ideas. Bishop to b5, maybe bishop to c4, bishop to f4, castling, rook to d1, simply building healthy setup. So here after the move queen to d4, as said, e takes d5 was played, so not knight takes d5, and we have now e4 immediately by Stockfish. Stockfish breaks the position immediately. Great attack. We have knight to c6, counter attack on the queen, and now bishop to b5. If you, for instance, play bishop to d7, that seemed to me like a normal idea, then we can simply play bishop takes c6. After bishop takes c6, we can play e takes d5. And it seemed to me in the beginning when I analyzed the game that it would be a risky idea to open the position when you don't have the bishop pair on the board, but Stockfish usually breaks all of the principles that I know in chess. After e takes d5, maybe knight to d5, and now castling is a great choice, because black has now problems to develop the dark square bishop. Let's see, maybe bishop to e7. We can simply take the pawn on g7. If, for instance, black tries knight takes c3, then after queen to c3 and bishop to f3, rook to e1, very important. Black has to cover with the bishop, and now we shouldn't take the bishop on f3 immediately. We should simply take the pawn. That's the most important thing. After rook to f8, we can simply play something like bishop to g5 and similar ideas. Maybe now to take the bishop on f3, but it's really a bad position here for black. Black will stay with the king in the center. So after the move bishop to b5, you see Winter tried d takes e4. We have queen to d8, a trade of queens, king to d8, and now knight to g5. The idea is clear. The fork on f7, but also a counterattack on the pawn on e4. So that's why Winter escaped here with king to e8, and now castling played by Stockfish. It's better really to castle immediately than to take this pawn on e4, because we want to have a king secured. We want to have also the rook connection. We want to play castling and then develop our dark square bishop somewhere where we could have the very important rook connection, and the rook connection will play a very important role. This is really a great fast developing style by Stockfish. You see black's king stayed too long in the center. His bishops are out of game. The rooks haven't played so far, so in the game Stockfish castles. If you try, for instance, to hang on to this position with bishop to f5, still rook to e1 is a very nice choice. So if you take, for instance, this pawn immediately, knight to e4, then it's maybe not so good, because knight to e4, and bishop to b4 will happen. Then you have again a simplified line. Not so good to proceed here. I think black can hang on to this position. So after the move castling, we have bishop to e7, knight to e4, and now knight to e4, knight to e4. And it's credible now what Stockfish will do. Stockfish will sacrifice in one particular moment a piece. But if you notice, most of the times the piece sacrifice works when you have maybe the queens on the board. Then maybe we can sack a piece for pawn, but then we can maybe create some checkmate threats. And here the problem is the position is simplified, and the problem for white could be if you trade off too many pieces. If you could just imagine this position without the minor pieces without the rooks on the board, then black could have maybe a favorable endgame, because black's king is more towards the center. Black will get the king in the center much easier than white. White is too far away. So as I said, it's a risky choice to go into such middle games where you don't have so many attacking possibilities. But Stockfish, of course, the best attacker now, will find a way how to punish black, because black stayed with king too long in the center here after the move bishop to e6, rook to e1. And it seems now again that this rook cannot create any attacks because two bishops are there. They're protecting the king very well. And Winter noticed that there could be maybe some tactical threats on the e-file and played king to f8. We have bishop to e3 and now knight to b4. And this is now really, from this point on, the game is really madness. So knight to b4. Again, it seems that Stockfish has made a mistake because, first of all, the a2 pawn is hanging, and also this c2 square is very weak. We could create a fork on both of these rooks. But Stockfish calculated this position very well, played rook to c1. And that's what I meant. The rook connection is very important. You see, we shouldn't evaluate this position that it's equal material. We should evaluate the position that this rook is out of game, so it's worth 0 points. So it's like Stockfish is playing here with one rook up. So after the move a6, maybe if you try rook to c8, you see the problems when you are lacking of this rook connection. Rook to c8, bishop to c8, and now rook to c1. That was Stockfish great tactical preparation. If you try bishop to e6 to attack maybe and get out of the range of the rook, we can simply play rook to c7. It's very important to get this rook on the 7th rank. Now bishop to e5 could happen, but you see you cannot protect your pawn anymore. Rook to c8 is a serious threat in checkmating too. So great preparation here. As I said, rook to c1, Winter plays bishop to a6, pardon me, attacking the bishop on b5, and we have now bishop to f1. Again, Stockfish hasn't lost the rook connection. The bishop is still on an active diagonal. It has great attacking possibilities. The most important thing is, as I said, rook connection, this types of position. So knight to a2. Okay, we're a pawn down, but now this activity of the rook is very important. Rook to c7. We have rook to c8, and now Stockfish grabs back the pawn. Rook takes b7, and it's really a wild position because Winter has now the counter attack with bishop to d5. And again, it seemed to me something went wrong because you cannot protect the knight on e4 with rook to b4. Of course, the knight or the bishop would take it simply. Here, Stockfish, which is really incredible, sacrificed the piece with the move rook to a7. The problem is again that after the potential bishop takes e4, both of these bishops will be on the e-file. This rook connection is very cool here by Stockfish. Winter accepts the challenge, plays bishop takes e4, but now bishop to b6, double attack on both of these bishops. We have f5, which is a normal choice. We want to hang on to our piece. And now after the move f3, we have bishop to b4. And it seems now that Winter gets out of the attack, but now rook to d1. What we want to do is, of course, doubling up the rooks on the 7th rank, where we could really create some madness. As I said, we shouldn't evaluate the position that black is a piece up here. We should evaluate the position that Stockfish is up the exchange, because this rook is not playing. So that's the most important thing to realize. It's simple as that. We have 2 rooks and 2 minor pieces against 1 rook and 3 minor pieces. So Stockfish is here up the exchange. So that's how Stockfish calculates the position. So after move rook to d1, we have bishop to c2 and now bishop to a6. If you try bishop to d1, then again we can simply take. Again, you cannot get out with your king, you cannot activate your rook, and with this bishop, 2 bishops, still your knight is hanging. You will lose some tempos, and again it's a bad position for black. So after the move bishop to a6, here Winter played rook to b8, a counter attack on the bishop. You could maybe play here in this position instead of bishop to b4. Let's go back. I've analyzed this line. I wanted to see what happens if you, for instance, play bishop to c5. That could be also a choice. Then we can simply take. After rook to c5, simply we can grab back the piece. The a6 pawn is hanging, so that should be also cleared here. So as said, bishop to a6 will skip a little bit faster. Now bishop to a6, attacking the rook in the game. Rook to b8, as said, attacking the bishop on b6. But now rook to d5, which also surprised me a little bit. But here is the problem. Bishop to e7 has been played. If you try rook to d7, then I think black would simply take the bishop on b6. But here, after the move bishop to e7, Stockfish plays rook to e5, attacking again the bishop twice. If you try rook to b6, for instance, if you try to grab the bishop, then it's not the point that we want to take the bishop on e7. We want to play bishop to c4. And if you try to escape, maybe with your bishop, then you get, you see, rook to f7, and it's a checkmate. So again, a great tactical threat. So here in the game, after the move rook to e5, bishop to b3 was played, and now bishop to c7. Now Winter, with the move bishop to b3, realized that the bishop could come on a very active diagonal here on c4. But now Stockfish finally escapes with the bishop. It comes with an attack on the rook, so that's why rook to e8, and now bishop to b3, attacking the rook. And here Winter hoped for a good line, because king to f7, if we take, for instance, the rook, that's not good. Then we can simply cover everything, and after potential here bishop to d6, I think with bishop to e6 we could maybe solve the positional problems. But that's why here Stockfish, of course, is not interested to take the rook. Stockfish simply continues to attack. As said, this rook is out of game. We're simply up the exchange. We're attacking now black. If you try, for instance, pardon me, let's go back here, bishop to d6, bishop to e6, and now comes really a great move by Stockfish. Pause the video and let's, like we always say, test your might here a little bit. Test your might. Okay, find really a good move now for white. How to proceed the attack? It's really hard. It's not that I would have solved this puzzle, but for those who want to have maybe fun, try to find now really a great move which paralyzes everything here for black. I wouldn't see that move. It's not about that I know everything. I wouldn't probably play that move. I'm not sure what I've played here. Maybe even, I don't know, taking the bishop and then maybe try to take the bishop and maybe something like take the knight. I don't know. But here Stockfish realizes the potential checkmate threat that black has here. Stockfish played the very, very tricky move f4. And here h6 was played, creating some spaces, trying to get maybe somehow this rook to h7, maybe protect somehow the 7th rank. And Stockfish played now bishop to c5. If you try, for instance, king to f6 to get out of this tactical mess, that's the importance of the move f4. It cuts off the potential g5 square. And here rook to e6 is now a possibility, simply sacrificing the rook for the exchange. After rook to king to e6, we have bishop to c4, and you see now after king to f6, both of these bishops are cutting off the king, and the g5 square is also cut off. Now rook to a6 leads into lost game simply for black. You could maybe cover, but we can simply take, and then after that we can take the knight, and it will be game over. So f4, great move here by Stockfish. As said, h6 was played, and now bishop to c5. We have knight to c1. Here Winter is desperately trying to escape with the knight to get somehow this extra piece into the game, but now Stockfish plays the similar tactic. Rook takes e6, king takes e6, and again bishop to c4. Again rook, king to f6, rook to a6. Again the same tactical threat. Bishop to d6, rook takes d6, and now after king to e7 we have this discovered attack. Very nice move. The rook is basically hanging, but first it's check. King to f6, and now bishop to d4 again, creating another check. King to e7, and now after rook to d1, the knight is trapped. That was really great attacking information here by Stockfish. Here knight to e2, bishop takes e2 was played, and now rook to d8. It's not a problem, as we have now also this extra pawn here on the queen side. We have two bishops now for the rook. Here you see, finally, black has its rook connection, but it's simply too late. After the move b4, king to f7, bishop to h5, king to g8, and now simply pushing this pawn. Bishop to e5, simply trading off more pieces, because black can never protect this white pawn from promotion. These bishops are simply too supportive, and it's after g5 we have king to f2. We'll skip a little bit faster this position because it's obvious that white has a completely winning endgame here. Bishop rook to d1, attacking the bishop. We have bishop to f5, and here simply pushing further. Rook to d1, again simple move. D8, and now even bishop to c8. We're not allowing even to black to take the pawn on b8. So checkmate 7. So here rook to f8, we have rook to d8. Now the promotion. Let's see how Stockfish checkmated here. Again, a desperate try. Queen to g7, king to 8, and now queen to e7. Again, checkmate. So, but let's go back to this critical moment of the game. Here, this was really a surprise. This idea to take the pawn and then bishop to d5, double attack. Here, Stockfish simply sacrifices the piece and activates the pieces. Great attack again by the mad Stockfish, really, sort of, and great attack. Great gameplay. As I said, we should really enjoy these games because they're really incredible. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more brutal Stockfish, Alpha Zero, Lila Zero games, check out my commented chess games played by computers. Here's the link. And if you want to see humans battling in their best chess games, here's also the link, the best chess games of all time series. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best of